So how are contract times running from a standpoint that you guys see? Because you guys are obviously running from the day it gets signed all the way up until the day it, it gets executed. So for closing.
So with contracts, I'm sure a lot of the realtors out there have seen just between the extended times for loan processing with all the refinancing and stuff that's going on compared to before the whole pandemic hit. I mean, we were seeing some contract timelines that were under 30 days just because the market was moving so quickly. And since this whole thing has started, it's definitely gone over that 30-day mark. It hasn't been crazy as far as how far out it's been going, but there's been, instances of more extensions and stuff like that being put in place for the closing date. So I would say probably around that 40-day mark is about the max we're seeing right now on financing deals. And then, cash deals are just kind of whenever everybody's ready, they can close. It's more so, I think, due to the loan processing timelines, just with all the different lenders because of how much influx of the refinance requests they've had. So other than that, though, it hasn't been crazy. Just a little bit more than usual.
Gotcha. Yeah, obviously we're hearing everything that comes from the lending guidelines, and every day there's a new, this one's going to delay it, or this one isn't. They're, adding requirements. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's always good to kind of check in with your lenders, like whoever you're working with, the buy side. If you're talking with your buyers and they already have a lender selected, just kind of check in with them to see what their appraisal timelines are looking like and what their general underwriting timelines are looking like to close a loan. It just depends on each lender. Sometimes they're pretty good all the way up until the closing department, and then their closing department is slammed. So like everything will be running smoothly, and then you'll get ready to close, and you're like wait until the last minute to get the closing package over to title and stuff like that. So it's on a case-by-case basis. I mean, as usual, generally it was like the larger banks typically took longer, but now it's all up in the air. Like, who knows how long it's taken, depending on which lender you're working with.
Yeah.
So would you still suggest, Drew, that you just do 30 days on the contract, or would you do a little bit longer just to buffer the time a little bit?
So what I would suggest doing is of course reach out to the lender. And depending on what they say, if they're like, oh, we're running like 30 to 35 days, like, well, then do 30 days if it's going to give you a competitive offer, because at that point you can just press the lender just a little bit to be like, hey, we have a 30-day closing. Like, and then there's a lot of things that as the realtor and the TC, like working together, you can kind of keep that train rolling so you're not falling behind in the lending, in the underwriting process. So that'd be like making sure that your inspections are scheduled as soon as possible. That way you can schedule your appraisal as soon as possible, and that way they can get the file into underwriting, for final review and stuff like that as soon as possible. That way you're keeping on track. The whole thing with all of this is like there's concurrent timelines running at the same time, but a lot of them are interconnected. So if you can kind of keep the train rolling from the beginning, that sets you up for success to keep on track with everything, especially with the lending on the back end.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other thing I'll say is that we've seen a little bit of we've seen people extending contract times as far as like 60 days out or 90 days out when all of this first started, and they started doing some pre-occupancies. They started doing some stuff like that to get creative with financing, because some sellers were like, I'm not allowing appraisers in our house, etc. So we had to do some extensions, but that's been that's been some extreme cases, but we have seen a little bit of that.
It's kind of here or there. That was more towards the beginning of when all this happened, because there was such kind of like that fear and unknown of how we're supposed to act during the pandemic with all the stay-at-home orders and the social distancing rules put in place. I think for the most part, most of the different entities like home inspectors and appraisers and realtors have kind of adjusted to that to make that process run a little bit smoother. And, if you're selling your home, you have to let certain people into your home in order to complete the process. So like, I think that there's been a good adjustment within the realtor community and all the different people involved where that's kind of worked itself out. Let's put it that way.
Right. And setting those expectations up front to say, hey, if I don't want someone in my house, well, maybe let's go ahead and just take it off the market for a little bit and see how this shakes out and put it back on when you're feeling comfortable, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I know the governor is supposed to talk today at some point. Heck, he might be going right now. But once they lift the stay-at-home orders, I mean, how fast are we going to react to it? You know, who's going to jump into it? It's going to be interesting. So,
Yeah.
Sure.
so,
Everyone's going to be at the beach.
Yeah. After yesterday.
just don't bring your
I think
beach
you're right.
chair. Don't bring your beach chair. You can't bring anything to sit. So no towels.
Oh, you can. You just have to be 6 feet apart. It's crazy.
Oh, I thought. Oh, yeah, it's going to be. Well, you won't see me there. I burn in a matter of 2 seconds walking to my car. So.
Same here, Chris.
But that's on a Drew. That's on our next call together. Yeah, what two pale guys do.
How not to get burnt in Florida. Yeah.